Amazing. All right. So we will start quickly now. Okay. So welcome to our prompt lab. This is the second session of our prompt lab. A little bit about me. I am the founder of Aiku. We are a company specializing in applied AI, bringing automation to enable better and healthier community. So we create software. So we design, prototype, and develop customized software, as well as providing a learning platform for individuals and teams. Yeah. And together with me today, I have Ziggy, and later on, he will also share about himself. So, about Prompt Lab. The Prompt Lab is a series of 5 online learning sessions covering the most central topic in the space of Gen AI. So, we would like to discuss how to write the best prompts. So what's special about this series is that we try to be hands-on as much as possible, and we make it flexible in a way that you can join our live session, but you can also watch our recordings online on YouTube anytime at your own convenience. It's completely free, so you can join and you can share this learning sessions to your family and friends who would also like to check out the information and learn together with us. And you can also be interactive here on the live session as well as the online the group that we will later on share with you. So this is the schedule. As being mentioned, this is the second one, which is the assess quality. But we have done our first fundamentals. Some of you were not there. So in case that you have not checked out the video, we will be later on share with you the link to the YouTube video. And this is the QR code to our community where you can join our community all around the world. So we have sign up and people from different countries, not only in Europe, but also in South America, North America. So please be welcome to join us. So thank you so much. I will hand over to Ziggy, who's going to take over the session. And Ziggy, stage is yours.
Yay. Q. And let's dive into our session. At first, assessing the quality of a prompt, it might at the first sound a little bit intimidating and technical. And if you come across some of the content that is shared, it might also seem to be, but it just as well is quite intuitive that this is something that we want to do. Because, I mean, if we get some outcomes or results from predictions or probability-based systems, such as a weather forecast, we would also go and open the window to check whether the weather prediction seems to be correct or not. And particularly with Gen AI tools getting more and more capable, these systems appear to be so super intelligent, and we want to trust them a lot because there are so many interesting use cases that we want to trust them with. It really bears the question of how well can we steer them with the prompts that we write. And as we steer them, and they go into one or some direction, is it the direction that we wanted them to go to initially so that we can improve our steering? And therefore, this is about this aspect. The last time we have started looking into prompts, quite basic, the fundamentals, how to write a good prompt. And we looked into this one here, and this was sort of our start and reference point. It's a post from OpenAI co-founder Ben Hilek, who shared the structural setup of a prompt, how he would find it to work for him. And we looked into it. And Today, I want to raise the question, how do we actually check for its quality? So the last time we rather looked into the structural setup, what are the components here, and are the components that are represented here the ones that are recommended in general by the model providers. If you have not seen it, go check it out. So just to remind what this prompt is about, it's about searching or researching for hiking trails around San Francisco. So the user expects the system to check trails, such as you can find on a website called All Trails. And he wants to have the address of the starting and the end point. He wants to have the distance. He wants to have the drive time to get there, hike duration, and what makes it a cool and unique adventure. And I think one aspect that would be interesting in terms of the whole quality of aspect of this use case is also if whatever trails I get recommended, whether they exist. So is that actually factful what I get in return? That already relates to the response. Another thing that could relate to the response is whether the return format, how I have specified it here, actually is detailed enough. Do I expect a tabular outcome or a more list style or just text? How do I actually need this to be? And also, I'm wondering, if I repeated this prompt for a couple of times, would I always get the same top three? If I changed something about the prompt, what is the likelihood that I get other prompts? As the last time, I want to give you a little bit of an overview. And this is also the major topic of today. It's, on the one hand, how to evaluate a prompt and its response, but more in general, I want to provide an overview on the landscape of large language model quality assessment. So if you want to consider assessing quality in this context, what are the things here? And speaking of the landscape, we have three major things that we can look into today. One aspect is what the model providers say. Another aspect is more the community with a focus on Hugging Face, which is the most vibrant open source AI community. And last but not least, some emerging trends and, let's say, future directions, so that you don't only understand what's currently going on, but you also get a little glimpse and understanding of where we probably go next. Let's start with the first aspect of our landscape, and it is some evaluation frameworks and metrics that come from the major providers. I will roll through a couple of providers one by one, and I want to start with those who are, let's say, the heavyweights of the industry. And there are a couple of things that can be highlighted with each. Anthropic, for instance, first and foremost, we have to say, because Anthropic was founded and initiated with the idea to create trustworthy AI, and that has been their main goal. So they offer a quite comprehensive set of tools and features inside their workbench and in their overall approaches. To be highlighted, there is a prompt generator, a prompt improver, and a test case generator. The prompt improver and the test case generator I will show you in a moment. But they also provide guidelines such as those on prompt engineering that we have looked into the last time. And one highlight that I found worthwhile putting here as a URL link, a little reminder, we also share the slides in the WhatsApp group and our other social media channels. And all these links here are clickable. So if you're interested in researching yourself, go and check this out. We circulate and you're open to self-study. But what I wanted to highlight is that they also have a guideline on how to develop tests. And they have some quite good referencing on systematic testing approaches. I want to show you a first example of Anthropic, and it is the prompt improver. So this is sort of a built-in tool that they provide, and I have taken the example from the website that is referenced in the slide just before. And here you can see how this prompt improver can result into a very good prompt indeed. The case is from the following list of Wikipedia articles, identify which article this sentence came from. Respond with just the article title and nothing else. And then in this double curly braces, these are variables where the titles and the sentence are inputted. So it's like a placeholder, you can imagine this to be. And this was the original prompt, and the prompt improver created this little more wordy prompt. And this is something that I can already tell you right from the beginning. Should you have or should you go through the process of improving a prompt, it usually gets longer. And this is mostly because the instruction just doesn't get longer or so. It's also because more structural components get added. One of which is the one that we find midway here. It is the goal and the steps that are to be followed. Here it is, your goal is to determine which article title from the provided list best matches the given sentence. Follow these steps. First, list the key concepts from the sentence. Second, compare each key concept with the article titles. Rank the top 3 most relevant articles. Explain why they are relevant. Fourth, select the most appropriate article title that best encompasses or relates to the sentence's content. So you see that this breakdown of tasks was not included at the beginning. Then there's also a more detailed output instruction, which is wrap your analysis in an analysis tag and include the following. And here you go, there's even more. And then also after the analysis, provide the final answer and output only the chosen article. So there is a lot more detail in terms of how you want to control what the AI does. And this is the major first idea that we have already tried to communicate in the last session when it was all about writing some good or solid prompt. If you have a very tight grip on your steering wheel and you explicitly know what you're doing, it's more likely that you get explicitly the result that you are aiming for, right? So this is the very first approach that you would usually see is let's try to improve the input before we look into the output. With Anthropic, they also provide something else that is sort of notable or worth mentioning. It's the test case generator, and that is inside their workbench, and it helps to evaluate an assistant that you have set up, such as the one that we have seen just now with the prompt. And here you can define test cases. As you can see, the test cases have, again, some variables with color and sound, and then a definition of the model response and some rating method. And this is what has been provided here in this case, 3 test cases that are the baseline. And then with a click of a button that you just add a test case, you get more cases generated. This is very neat and handy because coming up with test cases is just as hard as it can be to come up with examples. This is something that we discussed the last time. Providing examples, for instance, is a very, very good method to improve the quality of a prompt, but it's definitely not easy to come up with these just from a cold start. And here you see that with just a few or single shots, this gets extended. And I thought that's actually a cool feature. And it all lives in a platform. So this is the Anthropic console or dashboard environment where you can set up your AI models a little more dedicatedly. So this also goes beyond the I'm just a user level. This is already, let's say, for those who want to work in the backend or behind the curtain and open the engine room a little bit and create very, very specific AI systems for their specific use case. Let's go to the next one. It's about Google. And Google has some interesting feature, I would say. This is good for users, in fact. And it is a double check feature where Google introduces what they are so good at, and it is a Google search function for accuracy assessment inside their Gemini application. We will have a quick look into it in a moment. Beforehand, I also wanted to mention that in terms of frameworks and tools, they provide metric templates in Vertex AI for structured evaluation. That's pretty cool. And they also try to emphasize safety settings and feedback mechanisms that you have access to in the Gemini API. So again, this is more for the developers, not so much for the users. That's really cool still. For users, there is quite some extensive guideline on how to write good prompts. And for the developers, this is what I have highlighted on the section of guidelines. They don't only have the prompt components that they talk a lot about, but they also have code samples in Python, Go, and Java, where you can basically copy paste some templates, how to interact with the API and get going right away. So I thought that was pretty cool and makes it easy for you to start writing better prompts or instructing the model, as well as getting the evaluations done with more ease. So let's look into the feature of the double checking with the Google search, and I can show you with this very simple example that I have drawn from the website, which you can access to with the link that is provided on the slide beforehand. And it basically helps you to, based on a user's prompt and the model's response, get a grounding. Grounding always means that you provide a factual basis for what the model created as an outcome. And here the grounding is coming from websites. Has many benefits, some shortcomings, of course, as well. But one of the big benefit, of course, is that there's a lot of information on the web that you also have real time, at least the possibility for real time updates and so on. So here you can see on the bottom that there is the web.dev website that helped to, or that can be used to verify whether this information is actually factful. So in this regard, it's a countermeasure against hallucination and making sure that the models work with more factfulness. Now, the big incumbent in the AI market, OpenAI, what do they do? I want to highlight a framework that they have published. It's an open source library on the one hand that helps with benchmarking the large language model outputs. It's called evals, even though it's like just evaluations. The short name is evals. They have also a user interface for that, which lives in their OpenAI platform. So you don't only get access to this via an API or so. So therefore, it's also no code, low code friendly, but it's also open to any developer at the same time, pretty open. They emphasize on a lot of metrics that you can use in order to evaluate the response of the large language model. And this is how this example is then a little bit different, because beforehand we looked into the input more. Now we're going to look into the output. And what I also wanted to highlight is that they have some prompt engineering guidelines, how to write a good prompt, but also for testing. So they have some testing strategies there, such as Google and Anthropic had them too. The big model providers, we see that they publish a lot on that. How does this evals framework and tooling work? I find that example quite good, and maybe for you to understand, like, okay, what's actually doable, and how can I make sense of testing in this regard? What kind of tests are we actually talking about? So I will use the OpenAI evaluation tools, but I want to mention that they are not the only ones who are doing that, and all of the other big providers are doing it, and some smaller providers are doing that as well, and I will show that in a moment what they are doing. Let's dive into it. How does the workflow look like? At first, you can create a new evaluation that would be backed up by some data sources that you can provide for either responses or input data, however your use case requires it. Then you can create some responses. This is the next step. And here you see that the double curly braces again with the item text. This is a variable again, sort of looks like coding, doesn't it? Where the text of whatever you have provided in the first step with your input data and so on would be pasted one by one iteratively and then will be used for further testing. All right. And then the next thing that you have to provide are the test criteria. Again, other providers provide similar, more, less. This is an example, but at least you can see this one at first. First and foremost, factuality. So always very, very interesting if you can provide some information together with the output expectation. We can come back to our trails and the hiking options. If I have provided a list of trails in the beginning and then I want to see whether the trails that get suggested are part of this list or not, then we have a case here. So we can measure the degree of the similarity. This is basically text equal to another text between the model's answer and a given reference. We can also, in general, check for similarities. So if there is a ground truth and we can compare with the ground truth, let's say we have not provided any trails, but we assume that it just knows all the trails, and then we want to check for that. Maybe there are some other sentiments or string checks so that you check for a very specific text. You can check for a given output format and whether some criteria match and so on. So without me going into each of the criteria, you already get an idea that you can get into the aspect of very detailed testing quite quickly. And this is also a good thing that we understand, even if we are just users or more those who are, not developing, but maybe conceptually designing an AI system. Maybe we are something like a project manager or a product manager. We still want to understand how we can trust an AI. And here I provide you with at least a couple of the testing criteria that can help you to understand that we indeed have quite a few tools at our disposal to create trustworthy AI that can reliably create what we expect it to do. I have already mentioned the other providers and what do they do. Here I have made a little summary of the, let's say, 5 more relevant ones. Sorry for those that I've missed out. But with Meta, we have a self-taught evaluator. That's a case that I'm gonna show you in a bit. But there are also other tools that first and foremost come from their research lab, where they share a lot how they make their open source model development more reliable. With Cohere, we have a prompt tuner that they have released last year. They also have a prompt playground with like some dashboarding where you can check your prompts. That's notable. With the other players that have at least like big open source models, we don't see that much. I have to say right away. It's not that they're not doing anything, but with Mistral, it's more the evaluation process that they explain and that they try to emphasize. For instance, in a prompt, you can ask a model to generate a confidence score. They suggest to have an evaluation step in the prompt. They also raise the point that you could use a separate large language model as an evaluator to the first large language model's created response. For the others, the Chinese companies, Alibaba, who are the ones who create the Quen models, they are to release an automated model evaluation feature in their studio. So Alibaba has like a cloud service where they also have a little bit of a platform there. At least they're doing something, but it's not really popular, at least not for our geography as we are in Europe. And then with DeepSeek, they don't have a specific evaluation framework either. And they share some prompting guidelines how to get more optimal performance from their reasoning models and so forth. All right, let's look into the Cohere prompt tuner. Found that cool. So at first, let me zoom into how this actually works. This is basically an example that can be applied to any other examples or models where you see similar approaches, and it is that you have an initial prompt or a prompt template that would be checked against other results that come from a new prompt. Then as a combination, or like the combination of prompts evaluated against each other to check what's the best. This is powered by a large language model, which basically judges the first large language model as well. And what can we see in terms of original prompt against improved prompt without the necessity to look into the very details? You're looking at this recording on YouTube, you can stop now and read through. What I want to highlight, though, is what is being added as a structural component. We have an example response that the prompt tuner added for us, and we have a more structured instruction so that the task and what I expect from it is clearer. Also, the way how, because this is about some industry standards and how they are to be used, is added here. This is a little bit more precise. And one thing that they have added here that we easily forget usually is an instruction what to do if a value cannot be extracted. It says not available shall be added. And this is putting into account what we usually don't, like, let's say, struggle with putting into intuitively, and it is some bad case logic. So what to do if the system breaks, because we always assume that the system doesn't break, and we usually have some good case scenarios that we describe in our prompts. And here I like that example for this very case that they highlight, okay, what to do if something doesn't work. Just a very short reference to what the guys at Meta, for instance, have been doing, or let's say noteworthily doing. And it is coming up with a way how to use large language models as a judge in order to replace human evaluations during the model development process. So now I have to highlight this is during model development process. This is less during the prompting process, but essentially what they do is they create a prompt, and then they have, and this is like here, X, and it generates a good response. And then they have another prompt that is similar, and it generates a bad response. And then there is a judge that basically needs to discriminate, okay, this is good, this is bad. And out of all of this judge data, they create like an optimization for the large language model that they, after all, iteratively develop. This is something that we can actually learn and adapt ourselves. So we get the output of one prompt, and maybe it's good or bad, but with a feedback of how it is good or how it is bad, we can play back to a large language model and improve iteratively ourselves. I later on can show you, will show you how to do it basically hands-on. Now we're moving to what the community does. And this means Hugging Face particularly, because if we talk about open source and AI community, there's no way around Hugging Face. Number one, what you find with Hugging Face and where they do a good service for the larger aspect of quality assessment is that they provide specialized data sets. So here there is a hosting of diverse data sets that are very crucial for benchmarking, such as actually like prompt data sets where you see the user rated prompts as well, or for generating whether a text is safe, toxicity, and so forth. So this is a really, really great service by the community for the larger aspect of quality assessment that can be fed back into the whole context of model development. Then a little closer to us users and maybe also developers, there are frameworks as well as spaces provided to evaluate outcome. So you can see here, this is a BERT scoring. So what it does is basically it allows you to prepare, or here it's prepared, and it allows you to compare a prediction against a reference. So basically here you can add a few rows where you say, okay, I would have expected this to result like that, and I received this. Please compare. And then you get some scores such as precision, recall, F1, and so on. Yeah, you get that for free. It's open source and one of the spaces, but there's more that you get as a space. This is probably what is so great about Hugging Face, that with the spaces, they directly allow us users to interact with, test, and compare performance of some different large language models quite often, or in many cases, just fresh out of the oven, new releases. For some time, the most popular space was the image generation model, Flux. Now a stable diffusion model is quite popular that you can see here in the upper right-hand corner, where you can try and check and improve your prompts as you go. But there are also other more, let's say, advanced capabilities and features that you can see here, such as an app development service that is powered by DeepSeek that you can check out, scraping websites with no code, all of these things where it's easy for you to just try and test and actually get an understanding of how I come back to the metaphor that I've used at the beginning. How does it actually feel to drive a different car? So I have learned how to drive a car, but now I'm driving a truck or I'm driving a motorbike. That needs to be experienced first in order for us to get an understanding of how to assess our quality of, well, steering the wheel, and then making sense of how the car goes. So that's quite a good service that they do here. And here's a question that I have to you. Very glad to hear from you. What's your favorite Hugging Face use case? Or maybe also space? What do you use Hugging Face most for? Is it the data sets? Is it the models to download models? Is it the spaces where they provide all of these directly accessible large language models? Let us know. I'd be curious to hear. Now we finish up our overview on the landscape of large language model quality assessment, and we go into emerging trends and future directions. And here, I just actually wanted to highlight these 6 topics. for you to have even more orientation. So far, our little walk across the landscape was, as an overview, should be highlighting a couple of things so that you're aware of what is going on at the minute. And now I want to broaden your horizon on what could be more relevant in the upcoming days and the future in general. The first aspect is the whole topic around automation of prompt engineering, in fact. We see that prompt engineering becomes very technical and more technical the more we use large language models to generate and refine prompts for other large language models. Here you can see the Anthropic example with the prompt improver or the Cohere example with the prompt tuner. That's just the beginning, actually. Another aspect, multimodal evaluation, that will just be a more challenging aspect in terms of assessing quality as we include more media such as images, audio, and video into our workflows, particularly when it comes to like agentic workflows. But that's another topic that we will cover in a moment. One other thing is continuous prompt learning. So that's the idea of AI models learning to refine their own prompts based on ongoing interaction and feedback. So it's basically me talking to an AI. An AI understands my shortcomings in my prompting and then corrects for it as it goes. Next thing is no-code AI platforms featuring automated prompt optimization capabilities. That is something that we see from the large providers, the classic platform companies such as Google and OpenAI with Microsoft in the back as well. Anthropic is doing something there. And you can even tell with Alibaba Cloud, they also try to build their platform, and we will see that coming more and more. Evaluating some advanced techniques, that's also interesting as models get more sophisticated, our way to interact with them gets more sophisticated, and then we also need better or more specialized evaluation methods. And lastly, with RAG systems and AI agents, we have additional need for quality assurance, and it is to both test the quality and relevance of the information that has been retrieved or has been used, and the quality of the response, be it the accuracy and factfulness of the model, or whether it is coherent with its action of the past, and so on. We just have a little wrap up to finish our session today. And it is, on the first hand, an iterative workflow that you can use. That's quite generic, to be fair, but still good enough to give you an orientation if you wonder how to get started and get going. Write an initial prompt, have the response generated, evaluate it. Is it good enough? Is it not good enough? Then maybe if you want to, you can analyze some metrics or at least get an evaluation of, can also be descriptive. I will show you one in a moment, and then adjust the prompt, generate the response again, and then evaluate. And if you feel good enough with that, then you can deploy and have that rocket flying. All right, let's come back to our initial example. And my question to you is this actually any good, right? Because this is a question that we had at the very beginning. Isn't it a good time to actually uncover this now? With the last session, we already said, well, there are some aspects in terms of the structural buildup that could be added here. Examples, for instance, the role and the instruction is here a little bit mixed up with the goal. even the last time we already understood it's not perfect. Now, I was wondering, okay, like let's say I don't have any specific tools, whatever. I just have my good old Gen AI model and I have this prompt. So what I've done was I provided this prompt that we have just looked at. I enclosed it into data tags, and then I gave a very simple task. I basically have just written down, improve the prompt stated above in the data tag. Apply most recent and advanced methods to tune the prompt for more reliable output. Explain your changes to the initial prompt. That's it. And I think this is basically what any one of us can do with any model that we are using. And here you go. I received a prompt that is more structured, as you can tell. Here's the role, here's the goal, there's a user profile and context, there's some hiking criteria, and there's an output requirement. The output is also structured neatly. And a final check is here as well. Ensure all 3 recommendations meet the requirement, and so on. And now, of course, our question is, we have 2 prompts now. What will do better? Obviously, right? And here we go. This is the outcome on the left-hand side with the original prompt, and on the right-hand side with an improved prompt. For full disclosure, I have used a Gemini model. Um, the prompt anatomy was initially for the O1 model of OpenAI, but both models that I've are actually reasoning models, so I thought it's still a worthwhile comparison. Now, question is, how do we actually evaluate this, right? One of the first strategies is pairwise comparison. On the left-hand side, there's one prompt. On the right-hand side, there's another prompt. Which one do we like better? We can look into specific mentions. So we have seen that earlier with the evaluation framework and the testing criteria that were provided by OpenAI. We could check for whether the trails that have been listed here, I can, for instance, zoom in a little bit. The first trail here is a Tomales Point Trail, Point Reyes National Seashore. And on the other hand, there is the Coastal Drama and Unique Geology on the Cortum Trail. Are these actual trails? Do they exist? I don't know. We would need to figure it out, right? So yet another test that we can go and check. With this little checklist, I actually end the session here and give you a little bit of a homework, actually. If you want to, take these examples of this prompt and try to tune it yourself, maybe. Check the initial prompt input for effectiveness, such as, is the context actually any good? Are the instructions clear? Is the format that you specified valid? For the response, do a quality assessment of, is this actually relevant? Is it factual? You can run it multiple times and see in terms of coherence whether it would result in the same trails that are suggested. And you can also check in terms of format compliance, like it depends on how you want the output to look like, whether that would have been realized as well. But, well, that is your homework, and this is where we end for today.
Thank you so much, Siggi, for the session. It was pretty comprehensive and so much information to digest, I think. So anybody would like to share the takeaways?
I can share a takeaway of myself, actually. Something that I have not realized myself, that it can be so powerful just to ask a model to improve the prompt that I initially asked in like let's say a first shot, and then have it iterate on it before I start. That is very, very good. And then when it comes to, I actually didn't cover that. I could have said that, but you have probably already guessed that this is possible. If you have two prompts and it's a lot of text, just as we have seen on the last slide that I've had there with the two hiking examples, just take one prompt and take the other prompt, copy paste that into the input and ask the large language model to compare the two. If you're as lazy as I am to analyze everything explicitly, this is something that you can do right away as well, without the necessity of a dedicated tool. Of course, there are some tools. Major providers have them. There are spaces on Hugging Face as well, some of which I mentioned, where you can do that in a user interface, but you can also do that yourself in just prompting.
Yeah, good. And my own takeaway is that it's really when we study this for the session, um, I realize how complex it is because many of the users or in my circle, in my business circle, is much more of the non-code or low-code users.